Welcome back to the Upper Tier Podcast, the football podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. Audio versions of the show are available through Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, wherever you pick up audio version show, you will find us. And tonight, of course, joining me, as always, the podfather in the network. How are we doing, Ian?
Oh, yeah, I can't do this tonight. Sorry, it's the wrong show.
You can if you like. You can throw up whatever you want at this stage.
I'm only messing. I've done it 8 on purpose. Maybe it should be 3 fingers held up tonight because there was 3 shots on goal from Ireland. So,
or maybe it was 8 fingers up because maybe we need 8 new players out of the 11.
There you go. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, what we said we'd jump on. I mean, it's the end of the international break now. Of course, we're going to be deep diving into the Premier League over the next few days with a number of shows. But we said we'd come on and discuss, is it time for a change with Kenny? Should he see out the rest of the World Cup qualifying campaign, which I suppose kind of makes sense at this stage because we're really not playing for nothing now, only pride. But the question I'm posing probably to yourself, and I know Darren might be joining us later, is should he get the European qualification stage as well? Do we see signs in there of improvement? Is there signs of youth coming through that he's coaching? We know he's trying to play a different style of football. Has he got the players to play that style? Or should he revert back to what we know, which is the likes of what Mick McCarthy and Brian Kerr used to do, where they play a style of football to the players' strengths and we grind out and we get the results that kind of tries to get us to the final stages of these competitions. So that's kind of the platform I wanted to set for this episode. So I know you've been quite vocal over the last week in this following Ireland. You've been very frustrated like the rest of us. And it's not that we're used to success and stuff like that, but we're used to having a battle and we're used to having a proper go and not being rolled over as easy, maybe. What's your general thoughts at the moment?
Well, to answer each and every question you put to me there, no is the answer. Very, very simply, no. And I don't mean to be a party pooper here, but absolutely not good enough. Like, we are a nation, as you said, of supposed fighters. Haven't seen that much fighting in this nation in any way, shape or form over the last 3 years, whether it be football or just in general the way our country is run. So I don't mean to be a party pooper here on this one, but I got to be honest, man. 6 shots on goal at home is not good enough. And then we can talk about an own goal here against Serbia. It's just not good enough. Home to Azerbaijan, struggling, is just not good enough. And whatever way people want to, sugarcoat it, we were shocking against Azerbaijan. We were both lucky and unlucky against Portugal. I think Portugal figured that we would be the Azerbaijan on that particular day. We were unlucky in the sense that we gave away the penalty that we did and didn't get a penalty. However, in terms of we played that kind of way where, the old Ireland, and I'd go as far back, Niall, to Jack Charlton. We haven't evolved since the Jack Charlton days. The difference is that we had great players. We had players like Ray Houghton and John Aldridge and Ronnie Whelan and Paul McGrath, Roy Keane. But in terms of Kenny, no. The goal. I mean, you mentioned pride there. If we have any pride at all, we would just get this hack out yesterday. To be honest with you, I thought he should have been done after the Azerbaijan game. I think he's, looking at this little head in the background there, he looks like he should have a position in the Dáil, to be honest with you, as Enda Kenny's fucking brother. I think there's levels to management, Niall. You know this now, getting into it with the kids, with yourself, and you're doing it for fun. You're doing it because your boy plays and all that, and I get that. But there's levels to management. And if you look at the nations, right, England is a different story, right? But if you look at the nations over the year, and this isn't just for me, I just want to preface this as well. I might be going in on Enda Kenny, I was about to say, Stephen.
It's the red tie and the white shirt is the giveaway.
And that smug look, Stephen Kenny, Enda Kenny, they're definitely related. But for me, this is an FAI problem. And it has been for a long, long time. The FAI, we know the gangster tactics that they've used. They're the same as the GA. But the difference with the FAI and the GA is that they're both gangsters, but one are lining their pockets, the other's lining their pockets, but still putting money into grassroots. I see it out in Dublin here with the guy, you know, they put money into the infrastructure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they do, and they make it worthwhile for kids wanting to play, and they create a pathway to play for their county. Whereas, what is there for young kids playing ball at the moment, playing football? There's nothing. And it's like there's certain, sorry, I'll pass it off to you now, but like in Blanche, yeah, we have this great facility and all that, and it's great, but there's not enough facilities, and there's not enough smaller clubs being looked after. I mean, we like our way, for example, Joe's was always the place, Joey's, right? There was still money being made out of that from chairman and stuff like that, which was the reason. There was always this little brown envelope. It's the Irish way, do you know what I mean? And it's not talked about enough. I think, as bad as Stephen Kenny is, he's going to be the scapegoat today because it's shocking. Anyway, it's shocking football. But realistically, the last manager we had was really a piece of shit and has set us back a long, long way. And I think you'll probably agree with that.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of torn on this one a little bit. I'm very, very disappointed in the 15 games or 16 games he's had in his tenure, really. You know, I think there's been a number of games in that where we would expect to win. I think the real low point for me was really the Luxembourg game at the Aviva. I thought was really, really bad. Not mistaken, the Azerbaijan game the other day. But I think I sort of look at it and I think a lot of it lies at the FAI's door. And I know you've been very vocal about grassroots and the investment and stuff like that. And where there has been some investment, there's not near being enough. But what I would say is we've really become a breeding ground for the English leagues, really, haven't we, when you think about it? We've become a subservient to those leagues, really, you know. And I just think, I look at Stephen Kenny and I think there's a guy, most of the places he's managed, he's been successful. And he's been very successful in what he did in the other 21s. The only place he really hasn't won anything where he went to manage, and that's when he took a step up, was when he went to Dunfermline. But if you remember, when he went to Dunfermline, he was also the runner-up in 2 Scottish Cups. So, you know, when we look at the blame on this guy, there's a massive transition going on in Ireland at the moment in terms of the team, in terms of the pattern of play, in terms of moving guys out. You know, the Wes Hoolahans, you know, all these guys had to be moved out. Maybe there's an argument that a few more of them need to be moved out as well. Have they gone as far as they can go? But with the players that we have to pull on at the moment, and it's something that I'd like to reiterate, a lot of these players aren't playing first-team football for their clubs. A lot of these players are bench players. And I kind of find it difficult. And I spoke to Ben about it the other night when we were looking at the Azerbaijan game. And I said, you know, if these players are sitting on the bench at their clubs and maybe getting a little bit of a run out or a sub, like you look at Adam Ida up front, he plays for Norwich, but he's generally used as a sub. How do you expect those guys to come together then in a 2-week period or a 10-day period and become, you know, an international body of work, if you like? You know what I mean? I find that very difficult. And then when you look at what Kenny's gone through, and I mean, this is not to make excuses in any way at all, because I get in, I looked at some of the stats there, and I looked at some of the stats in terms of his win percentage and stuff like that. And we know they're god awful. But if you go back through the other managers all the way back, I went as far back as Staunton and Kerr and everything, which is, you know, at times we thought like Staunton was so fucking bad. But if you look at his actual percentages compared to this guy, you know, you think you're leading with Ancelotti or something like that. You know what I mean? But is there a case? I mean, obviously a lot of damage, as you said, was done in the previous managerial side of things, you know, where we didn't get the Grealishes, you know, and the Bamfords and all these guys over the line, which previous managers in past times, Jack obviously was the man for that kind of thing. He set the precedent of that, really, you know what I mean? In getting those guys in and presenting this whole Ireland project as being a big deal, that we weren't like the sort of fourth cog in the Nations League, the home Nations League, if you like, or something like that. And I think somewhere along the line we've kind of lost that. And I suppose international football as well, when you're struggling like this, you know, and you've one win out of 15, you know, you're not really looking forward to the international break, are you? Are you really looking forward to coming over and throwing on the shirt and the badge with that kind of pride? When you know,
Well, you should be. You should be. And this is what I
100%.
was going to say. This is what I was going to say to you, right? Martin O'Neill was a hack, and I don't know what his fucking game plan was. Maybe it's because he's a Nordy or something, and he didn't want us having that level of player really, and was happy to hemorrhage money for his own pocket. He's been a piece of shit for a long time. I've said it before. I'm not a fan of him. I wish I had heard the story of Roy Keane bouncing off a locker room wall, to be honest with you, and I'm sure at times he wanted to. But Martin O'Neill's been a hack for a long time. Just ask Aston Villa fans how great they really think Martin O'Neill was. Just ask real Celtic fans how great they think Martin O'Neill was. He had a cup of coffee with Leicester, and that was it. And I know you love that analogy that I bring up, a cup of coffee, big time. That's what he had. You know what I mean? And I know he got Celtic to a final and all. When you look at that Celtic team, Niall, the way they were set up with Larson and Sutton, like, I mean, there was a quality throughout that whole team. Stilian Petrov and Lubo Moravchik, and you know, we can go on and on. I think Martin O'Neill cost us big time. Like I said, I think there was something there in the background. How can you not justify playing what was your biggest prospect in Jack Grealish and Declan Rice when they were there willing to play? They were willing to be capped. They put themselves on the bench, and then Irish fans take it out on these young lads then and call them turncoats and call them this and call them that. Bollocks. Absolute bollocks. They were there. They made themselves available. If they were capped, that was it. They would be playing for Ireland today. Can you imagine? I'm not even going to mention his name. That little hack out on the left wing, you know, exactly. And his first initials begin with MC. He needs to go. Without a shadow of it, he's never done that, really. Imagine Grealish playing in that position. Come on. And now we've a young striker playing up front who, as you said, doesn't start for his own club. I mean, it's laughable. Like, when we think about it, right? As a nation, we are a pretty big nation just behind the UK as such, as England. Like, we should be at the level of a Scotland, let alone Northern Ireland are now ahead of us. Northern Ireland are far, like, way beyond us. It's not even funny because their infrastructure that they've created is better than ours. Like Delaney and all these boys that we've had, we see it. Like, these lads are just absolute buffoons, and they need to be gotten rid of. The poison and the poison chalice that they've created for themselves needs to be drained. The swamp needs to be drained, and we need a reshake from top to bottom, and we need real football people in, not on huge salaries. I mean, Kenny is brought in, and like you say, he's a scapegoat. Look, he's never managed at any great level. He hasn't, and so what do you expect? You know, the difference, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results. And that's exactly what the FAI do. This time, though, they decided to bring in a lad to pay him pittance compared to what the last two managers were playing. Like, Trapattoni's another manager, one of the greatest managers of all time, got given shit about what he could do with Ireland. But what could he do with Ireland? What could he do with the players that were at his disposal? Do you know what I mean? Play fancy counter-attacking football that he did with Italy? No. The real problem for me, Noel, is the FA, and I think that swamp needs to be drained, and very quickly. And unfortunately, Stephen Kenny is the manager. He is the one that makes the decisions. I mean, it shows you how unqualified for the job, you know, when you look at his decisions in the Portugal game and not freshening things up there for that last 10 minutes. You know what I mean? That's their do or die decisions that, you know, can either make it or break it.
Well, you know, at the basic level, I mean, if you're not going to mark one of the greatest headers of the football in your box, I mean, and we know, obviously, he's one of the GOATs, probably one of the greatest ever played a game. So you can't take anything away from that as well. But I mean, at least mark the guy. He got 2 free headers.
But even, you know? Right, we're talking about the GOAT now, right? That young goalkeeper is a great find. I agree. I like what Kenny's doing. Yeah, I like what Kenny. Who does he play for, by the way?
He's out on loan. He's on Man City's books, but he's out on loan at the moment. I can't remember where he's out on loan in the Championship. and he's doing well. I
Okay.
don't know, was he at Rochdale or something like that? I'm not sure where he is now, but he's a
I
super
just wanted to
goalkeeper.
know because
Yeah,
he's very, very.
Mark, actually, our resident referee who comes on the podcast, speaks very highly of him. Mark refereed a number of his games when he was at under 18s or under 17s. And Mark said he's seen him played out in Rowstone a few times, and he was absolutely exceptional. So Mark,
Well, that's it. Like he's a great find, and like listen, no matter what happens in his career, he gets to say that he saved the penalty from possibly the greatest player of all time. You know what I mean? But the point I'm making here is, yeah, I see what Kenny's doing, but at the same time, it's not like anything riveting or groundbreaking because at the end of the day, this is what he has at his disposal. You know what I mean? He has to play some of these younger players. Yeah. I mean, how Glenn Whelan ever got a cup of coffee in any big time, I do not know. Even at Premier League fucking level, I just will never know. But you talked about marking the greatest player of all time. That goal that Azerbaijan scored, as much as it might look great on a highlight reel as a worldie and stuff like that, nobody closed them down. Not one single person even went out to close them down at home, and then getting an equaliser in the final 4 minutes again
even the Serbian goal tonight, a simple little switch off, and he runs to the near post for a flick. I mean that's bread and butter stuff, really. You know,
these lads are showing their amateur level, and again, it's not. I'm not blaming these players aren't good enough, and that's not necessarily a knock on the players. We all know that certain players have certain levels, and they're not going to go beyond that. But there is no fight for the colours. There's no fight for the country. There and at the end of the day, the book does stop with management too. Like when you're looking at certain decisions, I look at that boy Connolly, headless chicken, 21 or 22, whatever he is, I don't care. I look at Billy Gilmore at like literally 19, 20, and what he's able to do. There's certain levels.
Imagine if we had him in our midfield, huh?
You know, even someone like, even looking at the Chelsea squad, they're looking at Ethan Ampadu, another player that could have been called up to Ireland as well. He's with Wales now. You know, these are the grit of someone like that you would have flying into tackles. You know, playing, gone on loan now and playing regular football. It's crazy, and I think
it's mad to think when you think about it. Really, that the longevity of the Glenn Whelans is actually what stopped the Declan Rices coming into the team. That's the frustrating thing.
Same with Robbie Keane as well. Same with Robbie Keane. Shane Long's career path could have taken a completely different trajectory if it hadn't been for that whole Robbie Keane love in. Because even though Robbie Keane was banging in 6 and 7 against postmen in the Faroe Islands, like Shane Long scored that absolute worldie against Germany, which we actually won. And then he was on the bench the following week because Robbie Keane needed to beat a certain goal record.
I suppose the argument against that is now we don't even bang in 6 or 7 against the Faroe Islands. This is the problem. You know what I mean? So we'd love to be doing that. We'd love to be doing that right now, I'd say.
Patrick Bamford now, Noel, 28 years of age. Who's he playing for and who's he on the bench for? Yeah. We could have offered him the sun, moon, and the stars, but you see, what happens is these young players look at exactly what happened to Jack Grealish and Declan Rice and go, no thanks.
Well, I suppose some of them as well are quite conscious that wouldn't have affected the Jack Charlton era. Some of them are conscious of the fact that if they do declare for Ireland, then that kind of England tax in terms of their transfer fee and their value would go down a lot. Like, for instance, let's be honest here, if Jack Grealish declared for Ireland and he came over and he was playing for us, he may go to Man City, but he ain't going for 100 million.
That's a fact. No, that's a fact.
And I suppose we have to be conscious of that as well. But I often think as well in terms of our scouting. Like, if you think about the MLS, which is now starting to play quite a quality level of football, and a lot of good American players come over to ply their trade in Europe, you know. And I'm just wondering, surely to God, there's a bunch of players playing in the MLS at the moment that have some sort of ancestry to Ireland, who have a grandmother or a granddad or an uncle or something like that who could declare for us and would love to come over and play for Ireland. Because maybe they can't get into the United States team, which has been on the up over the last few years. Or maybe they want something different. But I think that's where we fall down. I think our scouting and, as you said, the selling of the project. But then I suppose it's very hard to sell the project when all the other stuff came out about the FAI. And then, you know, we went down the road with O'Neill, and then we brought McCarthy, and then we bring Stephen Kenny in. And it's like, the project doesn't then look as appealing, really. And like they don't want to, like, it doesn't matter what people say about the pride and playing for their country and stuff like that. No one wants to come out and tug out for any match and get whooping after whooping after whooping. They just don't want it, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's
You know
so
what it is, Noel?
frustrating.
There's a certain word, and it's called culture. You need to change the culture of what Ireland are about. The culture within the dressing room, the culture about what it is at board level, the culture at grassroots. I'm going to continuously say that to the point where people are going to tell me to shut the F up.
But that's the reality of where it starts.
Yeah. Where is the culture of Ireland? Where is the incentive for young lads, my brother included? Great baller. The amount of great little ballers I've seen, and you have probably seen, that we know over the years, we can go, Ireland has a drinking culture, blah, blah, blah. Not if you've got the right format in place to keep these kids. Like I read a transcript today from Mason Mount saying that he wasn't even at parties during his teens. He never went to one single fucking party.
Yeah.
And you see these boys, you know, drinking after Champions League finals, and you know there's a culture there of it. But there's the difference, isn't it?
There's a time and a place.
You've got clubs over in the UK, and I understand the money is pumped in, and they make a lot of money, to be fair. It's not the FA that are pumping the money into the Premier League level, but at the same time, they are putting it in at, you know, championship level. Like, championship level players isn't a bad thing anymore for Ireland. That's fine. But make sure they're playing for their club week in, week out. Like I say, I couldn't tell you the full 11 of Northern Ireland, but I can guarantee you they're doing a hell of a lot better job than we are. It's the same with Wales, right? Scotland even.
Well, we always mention it on the show, don't we? If players go out on loan to championship sides, that we hope that they get the game time. I mean, we spoke about Billy Gilmore going to Norwich, and we said it's going to be great for him because he's going to now play week in, week out, and develop as a player. And to be honest with you, if we selected an Irish 11 from the championship and we had the players there that we needed, you know, we wouldn't have a problem with the Luxembourgs and the Azerbaijans of this world. You know what I mean? Because that's because even that championship level is way above that level. Talk to me about international football in general. I mean, the gap has obviously narrowed, hasn't it? In terms of, like, years ago, we would look at these emerging nations and we would say, look, they're the handy 6 points home and away. Your Gibraltars and your Faroe Islands and Cypresses and all these different countries, yada, yada, yada. That's changed now, hasn't it? Because I look at a lot of those emerging nations now, and I think they're starting to hire really good managers. They're starting to pump a lot of money into football because they see football as being now a huge part of their economy, which they never recognized before. Because a lot of these nations lived off a tourist business, if you like, you know what I mean?
Of course.
But now they're saying football has been a big part of their economy in terms of their revenue and stuff like that. So they've been pumping money in to develop it. And you can see now the way, like, if you look at Azerbaijan there the other night, how organized they were with that Italian manager that they have. And like, you can see that they've raised the game. It's not the local manager anymore. They're bringing quality managers in at every level.
They were the better team. Yeah, they were the better team, really. Like, in terms of even on the counter attack, they held the ball better. They passed it about better. They had what looked to me like a game plan to frustrate, and they executed it, you know, perfectly. But at the same time, you know, they get smashed by everyone else. I mean, we have one more point than Azerbaijan. Like, and I'm going to kind of go in on Dino here on this one, for example. Dino always gives out about the SPL and about Celtic and the Scottish football and all. Like, we're not really in a position to be laughing at them over there when this is what we produce. Do you know what I mean?
Having said that, if you look at the emergence of the Scottish players, a lot of them now are playing top-level football in the Premier League.
Yes,
you know, you have the McGinns and the Andy Rums. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but they got their coaching. Again, they were given a pathway at a young age to be scouted over there. Do you know what I mean? Like, where's the next? What you name one player to me now that it's our next star that you hear of, or like that one club in Ireland. You know, that's still like, we used to have the home farms, and like I mentioned, Joey's. You know, I think the likes of Dundalk have done an absolutely fantastic job in how they run their club up. You know what I mean? Just a bit north of Dublin, Dundalk have been great. Like, and they've done a lot of great stuff. I think Cork City are starting to come up a little bit. But realistically, Noel, what are the FAI doing to help them clubs that we're always knocking at the door? Like, even Bowles,
Well,
doing great.
you always find with the Irish clubs in the League of Ireland, and like we're obviously big fans, but I have League of Ireland people on the podcast all the time.
Yeah,
We always talk about those old classic legends and stuff like that. But you'll always
yeah,
find with the League of Ireland, you get a club that comes up, whoever it is, Dundalk or Drogheda or whoever it is, and they go on a run of about 2 or 3 years where they're winning the Irish Cups or they're winning the league and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they go bust. And
yeah.
then it cycles out and it's someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else. But the consistent one is always Shamrock Rovers, obviously, because they're really the only professional club in the league. And they have the money and the backing pumped into them. So that
The
most
Bows to an extent as well. In fairness,
yeah, but
Bows.
see, Bowes even changed as well because Bowes got into financial difficulty as well, and they
I
had to
know.
sell a lot of their senior players, and they had to bring in a lot of the young squad as well to rebuild again. You know what I mean?
And in
But
fairness, having Chelsea over the last 2 years in a row as well. I know this year we didn't get with Lampard's first game. I was there, you know, for that game, and it was amazing. It was a draw and all for Bowles, like, you know what I mean. And they got pretty much all the kitty. Chelsea basically said, "We'll give it." Why does a club like Chelsea have to come over and help an Irish team out? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I just think in the league, what happens is from a financial point of view, it just, I mean, obviously COVID absolutely destroyed it, you know, whatever little bit of draw they have there, you know what I mean? But I just think what happens is.
But even before that, Noel, to be fair, it was nothing.
Yeah, there's a financial instability, if you like, you know, kind of from club to club within the clubs, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like, you know, you can win a league and you can win a cup double and you can go bust. And you're saying to yourself, how can you win a league and win a cup double and go bust? You know what I mean? It makes no sense.
Let's go a bit deeper on that then, right? In fairness. And, you know, with the FAI, right, play devil's advocate here. They can only do so much, but in fairness, they hemorrhage money for themselves, to be fair. They could easily pass. I mean, Trapattoni's contract and Martin O'Neill's contract could have been split all the way down through the League of Ireland, and it would have, like, anyone that knows me, I'm a Bray Wanderers man, right? Small club, seaside club, but at the same time, the goals are, you know, are a team. Same with you. You're a Bray Wanderers man. Like, when I look at, like, Greystones were one of the first clubs that actually set up almost a semi-professional type infrastructure. The first club I ever played for was Greystones when we used to play down at where the apartments are now. Down at the seaside, and when you were taking a corner kick, you were just having to tap it in the hope that it didn't go into the sea, like
with the breeze, the sea breeze coming off and all that.
Yeah, it was madness. But the point I'm making is that I think the likes of RTE and our TV networks need to be held accountable too, because it's the same TV networks that jump on someone like Katie Taylor when she wins something, and then they have her on the Late Late Show, for example. And they're all like, "Oh, Katie, you're such an inspiration, blah, blah, blah." But they're not willing to put money in to make her fight available for everybody here to watch. You know what I mean? And you know, someone like an Eddie Hearn will turn around and go, "Yeah, no problem, bam, national broadcast." It's the difference with us and the English. They actually say what you want. They might build you up to bury you, but at the same time, they still put the money in to make it accessible. You know what I mean? And, like, there's no way that someone like TG Cahir or RTE or Virgin could not come up with some sort of new channel like the way Sky have, and they have Sky Premier League where they show different matches. There's no reason why that couldn't be made available for League of Ireland, to promote League of Ireland, and basically have, like, you know, a highlight show and blah blah blah. It's all well and good having the odd match on a Friday night, or, you know, a little highlight package at 12 o'clock at night when everyone's in bed. Grand. But do you know what I mean? And I don't think that's too much to ask for. It's just that they don't want to put the money into it.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Yeah, no, I get you. A question for you as well that I looked at today.
I'm hitting pearls here today. I don't know what's going on.
That team, it's the dynamic, you see. It's all good. That team that Mick McCarthy brought to a playoff against Slovakia, I know it was delayed because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, and then Kenny had stepped in at that stage. But that team that played in that playoff, that went out on penalties, was so unlucky. There's 10 of those players are still in our squad. But yet the drop off has been significant. I mean, if you look at, say, where do we begin? If you look at, say, Mick's record, his win rate is 44%. You know, which again is not far off. Like, you're nearly winning 1 and 2 games, say, for argument's sake. But when you look at Stephen Kenny's is 7%. You know, he's won 1 and 15. So it's kind of like, for me, it's perplexing as well when we look at the dynamic of Stephen Kenny, because this is a guy who has worked with the under 21s and has had some success in terms of results, maybe not trophies, but in terms of success. I mean, his record at under 21 level is 58% win rate, 12 games.
I'm going to mention one name to you. Brian Kerr. It's history repeating itself. Brian Kerr was the exact same thing. Done amazing at under 21 level.
But Brian Kerr at senior levels win rate was 55%, believe it or not.
Yeah, you know, and in fairness, that's a good point. And Brian Kerr gets shot down as well because of what he had at his disposal. Like, you know what I mean? Because we had the Duffs and the Keanes, and but at the same time, the point I'm making there is that it's different levels. Like Mick McCarthy, you just mentioned there. Mick McCarthy, as for whatever anybody says about him, he was a fucking Trojan footballer. I mean, Mick McCarthy might be the nice guy that comes on, well, Mick McCarthy, you know, and be the nice guy, but he was a fucking demon on the football pitch.
On a pitch, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, man, him and Paul McGrath, like, you're talking about two of the best of all time, along with the Lawrences, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Liam Begley, isn't it? You know, these are, is it Begley, yeah?
Beglin.
Jim
Beglin, yeah.
Yeah, Jim Beglin, sorry, my apologies. Lost the bleeding name there. But yeah, Jim Beglin, like, is another one that sounds like a really annoying commentator. Yeah. But again, cut you in half. People used to laugh at me. I used to laugh, actually, because I would say to my dad, Mark Lawrence, like, he looks like something out of a Monty Python movie, and he talks like it. Great game. And you were like, no, he'd actually cut you in half as well. He was a tough fucking son of a bitch.
Always rocked a killer mustache.
Oh man, he looked like one of the Chuckle brothers, didn't he? It's like, but to me, to you, sounded like them too. But the point I'm making is, Mick McCarthy still had a great pedigree as a manager, even at something like a championship level. Like, his work with Ipswich was very undermined, I thought, and very underrated. You know, at a time, and it was kind of ironic that he came in after Roy Keane, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he actually brought them, you know, close to promotion again, and had some. So Mick McCarthy, to me, was actually a fantastic manager. And to be honest with you, I thought they should have stuck with him. I know that they had this whole deal, and I don't know what his deal was, whether he just wanted to kind of take it for the short term. But I mean, Mick McCarthy coming back again, to me, wasn't anything, you know, it wasn't a bad thing, because even in Saipan, he made chicken salad out of chicken shit. You know, I know he got blamed on it, and he took the brunt of what Keane was saying. And look, I'm going to give Roy Keane a little bit of credit here. Everything he said in Saipan is right regarding the FAI. But then I also look at Roy Keane and say, Roy, as much as I stick up for Roy Keane above anyone, and I'm not a Man United fan, he was also part of that Martin O'Neill deal. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And didn't really put his money where his mouth is there.
Yeah, I mean, after talking for years about the devil and then going working for them again, was kind of weird.
Yeah, and like, what did he really do? Do you know what I mean? Like, he was the same one giving out about Jack Grealish and Declan Rice as well. Now, you know, and Keane's not one to usually mince words. I would have thought, like, you would have come out and said, well, to be honest with you, I thought we should have brought the boy on at you know, 80 minutes or whatever, give him his cap, and we have him. But
I think during his Ireland tenure, he, like, with O'Neill, he became really a parody of himself. I mean, he was you know, the stuff with John Walters and the stuff with Robbie Keane and all, like, he absolutely degraded them really in his you know, his press conferences and stuff like that, which I thought was bad taste, really, you know.
And he had no problem in, you know, backing up what Martin O'Neill was doing. You know, so to be fair, I think he's found his niche, and that's talking. So
yeah, well, look, it was great having you on, and it remains to be seen. It's interesting. I mean, I do think the time for change will come. I think Kenny should probably see out the rest of the World Cup campaign. I don't think there's really any point in changing it at this stage.
But what's it going to do? Well, it could send a message. I don't know. It could send a message.
But then it's kind of what's the level of what we want to bring in, and who's out there, and who's available, and who will look at this job and see is the job appealing with what's going on in the background and everything else that has to be resolved. It seems to me that it would be, as you said, there's a culture change there to go on as well, and that can take a long time. You know what I mean? That's not something you flip a switch. That can take years to fix. You know, so it'll be interesting to see if he does go, who comes in and stuff like that. You know, and it's yeah, it was interesting tonight looking at the Serbia game as well, like, you know, where the players were applauding the fans. And I was thinking, we're out there celebrating a draw from an OG. We played some decent football in patches and stuff like that. But in reality, you know, it's like sort of, it's nearly like the way we compliment failure in this country over and over again. You know what I mean? It's
very Arsenal-like, isn't it?
And it's what brings the levels down then, you know. If you're going to compliment and rejoice failure, you know, that's the level that you're going to be at, and that's what's been happening, you know.
Yeah, but it's like when you listen to the boy Ida after the game, like he was talking about how great it was. Do you know what I mean? And you had said that it was the Portugal thing. No, it was actually him after the game that day, basically saying how great everything is. Again, we have a team of Mayfainers who are only there for themselves. And that's the difference. I think that culture has been lost in football in the modern times.
I don't think there's any lack of effort from the players. I think in reality, it's just that, as you said, they're just not good enough. And that's it. They're just simply not good enough. It's not like you look at Hendricks out there tonight, absolutely ran his guts out, came off the pitch drenched from the effort that he put in. But the question is he good enough? At the end of the day.
And also, what are the tactics as well? Like I looked at it at Azerbaijan when we were playing the high line. Where's the midfield? I heard the commentator. I don't know who was commentating on the game that day. I think it might have been Ronnie Whelan, and he knows a thing or two about a thing or two.
Absolutely,
let me tell you. But he was calling it out. He was saying, like, literally, they're all up in the box. They're all within the D. Like, we need our midfield line to hold.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And stay compact. Yeah. Even when you're attacking, you need that. I think it's
But you have a number of players as well, slightly playing out of position and stuff like that. And he's trying to figure out a system. And it's do you know what it is? It's kind of, there's so many things he's trying to change, and you can't change everything all at once. And I think this is what's actually biting us, the fact that we're trying to change so much in such a short period of time. And I think it catches up on you eventually. And as I say many times on this podcast, players don't get sacked, managers do. And that's the reality of the business.
Well, I think in this case, I'm not opposed to that. I think it should happen yesterday. So
well, it remains to be saying, well, look, a pleasure having you on as always. Thanks for jumping on. It's great to talk about these things. And I like talking about, although international football for us as Premier League fans and stuff like that can be a bit of a troll. But look, it's our country. We're passionate about it. And that's why we do these things. We want to be successful. And at least we want to compete with those nations where we feel we should be on a par with them. But until next time, Dynamo Podcast Network on YouTube, at _upper_tier on Twitter, the upper tier on Facebook. You'll get us the upper tier on Instagram, obviously Audio Versus Show on Spotify. Hit us up, let us know your thoughts. Kenny in, Kenny out, or is this a much bigger problem? Is this FAI in, FAI out? What is it? We need to figure out. But we need to fix our shop real soon, or we're going to find ourselves ranked right down the bottom of these football nations. Pleasure, my friend.